you lead us in that, please? Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to roll call.
Director Aguilar, Director Raymond, Director Espinoza, Director McGlynn, Director Lohr, Director Murphy, Director Oliveira, Director Pereira, Director Silvera, Director Villalta, Chair McDaniel.
Present. Thank you. We have a quorum. Now we'll move on to item number 5, public comment. At this time, anybody from the public who would like to step up to the microphone and comment to the board? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to number 6, minutes. I have a motion and a second. Motion was Director Lohr, second was Director Silvera. Are there any other comments from the public regarding this item? I'll bring it back to the dais. I have a first and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion passes unanimously. What's wrong? Oh. See, I was moving quite through. Sorry, that's my mistake. Let's go back to item number 4, approval of the agenda. I have a first and about 7 seconds. All those in favor say aye. Any opposition? Motion passes unanimously. So now we can jump down to 7, is that correct? Or do we need to go back over?
5?
No, I did public comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then you can jump down.
We did the minutes. And now we're at item number 7, update from California Transportation Commission. We have a presentation from PVK. Right.
Allowing the money towards Campus Parkway, great things are happening. And so what I wanted to do today is come give you an update on what's happening at the Commission. So this is, in 2020 will be what we're calling Cycle 2 of many of our major programs. So Cycle 2 is our Trade Corridor Program, our Local Partnership Program, our Solutions from Congestion Corridor Program will all be in their second cycle of funding. I believe, will be in our 5th or 6th cycle on the Active Transportation Program. So, as you know, the Commission now programs and allocates not just those discretionary funds, it now programs and allocates all of the money in the SHOP, which is the major funding for highway repairs and operational improvements throughout California. We also oversee the state Transportation Improvement Plan, also known as the STIP. So those are, the STIP is up for, it's every biannual adoption this year as well. So we'll be holding hearings on the STIP here in January. So I just wanted, just real quickly, kind of how what you're doing here in Merced ties into what we're doing in Sacramento, because those are important. As you know, because you guys have lived it, the transportation needs in California and in Merced are great. There's just no way that it can be understood. And revenue, even with the passage of Measure V, and even with the passage of SB1, revenue is still less than the needs. Every program that the commission oversees is oversubscribed. There are more requests than there are dollars to give. Gas tax are still the primary revenue source for infrastructure improvements, and there are a record number of cars and trucks on the road today. We live in the age of the supercomputer and just-in-time delivery. That means there are lots of cars on the road, there's lots of trucks on the road. Vehicle miles traveled is at an all-time high. Ironically, fuel consumption is actually trending down because our getting better gas mileage in both cars and trucks. So revenue is not unlimited, revenue is constrained. And I think the one thing that we have to keep in mind as leaders is that Merced County voters want accountability and oversight, as do the citizens of California. And so, and in your Measure V expenditure plan, promises have been made to the voters. And so, as is the case in 25 other counties, we have to build a trust relationship with the voters to say that we're going to do what we said we were going to do when we passed Measure V. That means that you have to, and we have to, allocate our resources strategically. So you have in Measure V, 50% of your projects are local projects. And part of that, how you're going to be measured, is your pavement condition index. Now, luckily, after you passed Measure V, the next thing that was passed was SB1, and part of that was the local streets and roads money. And so that is a real, in addition to the HUDA funds that you had before that, that gives you 3 tools to improve your pavement condition index. Your traffic management, you have leverage opportunities on traffic management. Those are things like, intersections, widening, signalization, bridge replacements, and traffic calming methods. Those are all things that can be a part of your local projects in Measure V. And you have leveraging opportunities through, on the federal side, through CMAQ, in the local partnership program, through the CTC, and through the highway bridge program at the federal level. You also, through that funds, there's a carve out for alternative modes that can be bike and pedestrian, and there's great leveraging opportunities at the CTC through the active transportation program and through our local partnership program. And as you know, you spent a lot of time on you just updated your expenditure plan strategy on this fall, and so on those 44% regional projects, you know all the leveraging opportunities there through the federal, through the trading corridor enhancement programs, which that's going to be really critical to a lot of the projects we looked at today, and through the local partnership program. And then you have 5% set aside for transit, and there's going to be leveraging opportunities there as well through various programs, including the TIRSIP program. So promises that we've made to the voters, we have to keep that because we have to build trust. The good news is Merced County, Stanislaus County, you've recently passed a measure. Other counties are at the point where they're looking in 5 to 7 years. They have to renew their measure. And I will tell you that one of the things they're really focusing on, have we held the trust of the community? Have we done what we said we were going to do? Have we taken those promises and kept those promises? So keep your eye on that ball and keep it early. So I would argue that the best thing to do is you've adopted a strategy for your regional projects. As local communities and as a local county agency, have a strategy for that 50%. Have a local strategy. Have a strategy for your local projects to repair every street and road through either a seal, an overlay, or a cape seal, a chip seal, by 2026 and keep that going. You now have the funding streams to do that, to do something bold like that. Compete for matching funds. When you're competing, there's always winners and losers. And we talked about this in the car today. You know, you've got to come in with your best foot forward. Anytime there's a grant, you have to think to yourself, have I done everything we can possibly do to win this grant? Because if you haven't done everything, you're probably not going to win. That's just the bottom line. That means it's a call to action, and the call to action I have for you guys is to keep engaging. The great thing you did is have me down here, and continue to have people from the CTC, our staff, your state legislature representatives, have them out and show them what's going on. You know, your local measure allows you to get projects ready for construction, and shovel-ready projects always find a way to get money. That's just the way it is. I've been, involved in this for a while, and it just seems like if it's shovel-ready, ready to go, it may look hopeless at times, but they always find their way to finding money. So engage with Caltrans District 10. As many of you know, Director McElhenney has made it a priority to partner with local agencies. Continue to do that. Be proactive and prepared when you meet with these people. Does everyone in political leadership in your county know your top 3 projects? So when they're engaged in something that's maybe outside of transportation, but when you're having an opportunity comes up to meet with your federal representative, hey, our top project in Merced County is this, and this is what we really want you to know about. Partnerships on miners and the shop. We talked about this in the car, which is Director McElhenney is doing a great job of kind of being a little bit more forthright of, hey, here's where we're going to be doing repairs, and obviously with 140 and 152 and I am drawing a blank right now on 41. I think goes through 165. Excuse me. Sorry. Those are opportunities to partner with Caltrans District 10. If they're going to be doing on something, is there something that we can do economies of scale? So I think the other thing is engage with and Stacy's done a great job with this. The CTC and the Air Resources Board get together right now, and we've really done a better job, I think, engaging here in the last 9 months with CARB on some important issues there. You need to be heard on the use of Cal EnviroScreen. That's a topic that is coming up in many discussions right now of whether or not we continue to use Cal EnviroScreen. If that's an important tool to Merced County, I think you need to make sure you're heard on that. Make sure you're heard on the Highway 99 business plan. Obviously, the Highway 99's business plan has been key to a lot of the improvements that have gone on in Highway 99 through Merced County, and I would make sure that you continue to be heard on that issue. So I'd like to turn it over to questions from you now, or in engagement, any way you have, any questions or comments you have.
Got it. Thank you, Paul. Is there any questions from the board? Yes, Mr. Volta.
Does that work? Los Banos is simpler. Okay. Thank you for taking the time to come here today. And I want to tell you that promoting Dan McElhenney to the District 10 director was a stroke of genius. That man has been the first one in all his predecessors to take 152 seriously, and through Los Banos. And it's the only undivided roadway on 152. And we've had a number of accidents, and Dan has taken that to heart, and we are having safety meetings every month. And we are very anxious to partner with you, and hopefully with our city manager, we can meet with you personally sometime to let you know the trials and tribulations of 152, because we don't want to see anyone die on that road, and we certainly want to improve the flow of the 40 35 to 40,000 cars that go through our city each day. So I just wanted to let you know that Dan McElhaney and his staff have just been a godsend to finally getting the needed help that's been so long ignored on 152. So thank you.
Happy to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Well, Paul, I'd like to thank you for coming today. We had you said to keep engaging. And so, we had those conversations, and I was asking you if this was a full-time gig, just because of your engagement. It's been at such a high level, and it's much appreciated. But your engagement is so good that literally, it was the first time with the CTC I've gotten into the weeds.
Yeah.
Or below the weeds.
Yeah, we did, yeah. So I think half your board doesn't know the joke yet, but they'll find out in time.
Exactly.
Yeah, we won't throw anyone under the bus who maybe got us there. So.
Yeah, I don't think, is Matt here? Oh, yeah, Matt is here.
Okay. Oh, Matt, sorry. Yeah.
But thank you. Oh, Mr. Pereira.
Lloyd Pereira, and 165 is in my district, and I would just like to echo the sentiments that Director McElhaney is really showing us some love, and and the community appreciates it, really do. And so, anyways, I appreciate you coming down here, and thank you to Director McDaniel for putting that together.
Well,
Anyways.
I think one of the things we have to keep reminding loud and clear, I will strongly recommend loud and clear. Director McElhaney gets that these routes, 140, 152, 165, need to continue to have safety enhancements. And those safety enhancements sometimes are interpreted as capacity enhancements. And that's sometimes, I think one of the things that we need to keep talking to people in Sacramento of all departments, that safety enhancements sometimes may look like capacity enhancements, but they're safety enhancements. And so those enhancements do result in lives saved, and they're important, and they need to be prioritized. Stacy can, and it would take too long to go into it, but I can tell you that there's been a real struggle this last fall over the ITIP in particular, where I think the ITIP traditionally has been used to do improvements on these type of routes, and it seems like no one's looking. There's people who would like to not do that anymore, and so I'm continuing to voice the concerns of routes. I was down on Route 46 last Thursday. We need to finish the safety enhancements on Route 46, but we need to continue to do the Route 52s and these and Route 156 and Route 140, making sure those are part of the strategic plan, the transportation strategic plan. Stacy, that will be key when that comes up here this next year. But when you have a chance as a county to go up to talk to Sacramento, make sure you're talking about the importance of these, what are considered minor state routes. Obviously, they're not freeways, but that the importance of the state remaining engaged in their ITIP on improving these routes. Because sometimes I feel like I'm the lone voice, and I'll be honest with you guys. Obviously, you know me, and Darren knows. I'm a farmer from Stanislaus County. So, I've known these, in high school we played LeGrand. So I can tell people getting literally, going through Planada and losing the stripes, and it was so foggy, losing the stripes in the road trying to get to LeGrand one night. So I know these roads. Forgive me for forgetting 165, but going to Hillmar for basketball games and those type of things. The safety improvements, we know because of that how important they are. We know that Highway 99 is the working backbone of this state. We know we all see the increases in truck traffic there. Sometimes people don't know that because it's hard for them to get out of their location and get out. I'm blessed to be on the Transportation Commission that makes a point to never have a home. We go meet We don't have a building of our own. We go meet all over the state, so we can see these things that are happening. So just keep ringing the bell.
Right.
So I'm not very good at politics. I'm more of a nuts and bolts kind of
Yeah.
guy. But North Highway 59 stops in Snelling and becomes J59 over to 108.
Yeah,
And so the supervisors from the 3 counties, Stan and Tuolumne, I guess back in 2011, there was a push to try to get that to become 59 to go all the way through. So it's getting restarted.
well,
And it's a
good.
safety issue. So
I will tell you that will be a heavy lift, but if you all three work on it and you can get our legislative representatives on that, that's going to be critical.
Assemblyman Gray and Bigelow are
Yeah,
already on.
those are difficult lifts, but they're doable, but you just have to stay on it.
All right, thanks.
Director Espinoza.
Thank you. I was going to address regarding the director, McElhaney. He was very responsive, and he's already been in several meetings, especially in the meetings in Planada where, in my district, Highway 140. There's safety issues there they're dealing with. And also on South Highway 59, which right now, as it's raining, hopefully, we need the rain, but if it rains, it always floods at that portion over there. So where we need that new bridge over there. So
Yeah.
hopefully we get that addressed.
Yeah, no, I've been very pleased with Director McElhaney, and I will relay, he could not be here today, but I will relay the comments that, because I know that when the first day he started the job, we had a conversation, we said, let's make sure we're out there partnering with these locals, and he has wildly exceeded my expectations, so I'm happy to hear that.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Thank you.
Paul, thank you. Thank you very much.
Always good to see you.
You as well.
All right.
Maybe when we have Matt do his presentation, we'll let everybody know what happened. And Paul, please keep off the shoulders. Okay, Merced County Association of Governments. We'll move on to item number 8. Caltrans report, Tom Dumas. Can you follow up with that, Tom? That was pretty good.
Caltrans District 10, thank you all. Dan wished he could be here, especially now after hearing all that. I know he would, but he's just got elected to a commission on the Delta Protection Commission, so he's officially one of those, and this was his first meeting, so he had to make face.
That's a tough
I'd
commission.
love to come in and tell you something that you all just didn't hit already. We've already talked about Dan starting the 152 Safety Committee down with the mayor. We've talked about Hillmar School Safety Zone that Dan started with Director Pereira. We've talked about him meeting with Planada and the MAC out there. He's hit all my highlights. So I don't have a lot more thunder other than saying that the contract we've got on the 59 pavement job out in Atwater got approved December 31st. Folks do work on a holiday, and that's should start work toward the end of February. They're expecting them to start out there February 24th. Other than that, I'm here to hear if you all have any other questions or any other issues I need to take care of. We've looked at that issue of the weeds on S Street and found that portion's not on ours. I sent you back some pictures, Director Pereira. But if there's anything else, I'm more than glad to take back questions, comments.
Director Peralta.
Well, one of the things of the safety committee, they talked about having sidewalks down 152. The Caltrans yard does not have any sidewalks in front of it, so if you could take care of that for me, I'd appreciate it.
I'll get a shovel and get started on that.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
Anybody else?
Happy New Year.
Thank you. Oh, just for your information, it is raining all the way from Stockton down to here, so.
Yeah. Hey, Tom, I do have, we talked about the Highway 99 through Atwater.
Uh-huh.
How often is that diversion of traffic through Atwater? Is that going to be a continuous, or is that only as work is being done?
I couldn't tell you. I believe it's only as work's being done, but.
So at nighttime,
follow up.
maybe, is when they're,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. They're trying to divert traffic as little as possible.
Right.
But, on some of those bigger issues, I'd have to track back and get back to you.
Okay, good. Oh, Director Espinoza.
And the last one, any date on the groundbreaking for the northbound 99 in Livingston?
No. They were originally thinking it was going to be first part of January. That's come and gone, so I don't have a solid date on it. I expect it to be shortly, but I don't have a solid date on
Thank you.
that. But they'll send out invitations and everything when they get squared away.
All right, Tom, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item number 9, information discussion only. That's A through E. Is there any questions or something we need to discuss within this? Seeing none, then we'll go ahead and move on to item number 10, the consent agenda. This is an action item. I have a first and a second. Any comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the dais. All those in favor say aye. Any opposition? Motion passes unanimously. Now we'll move on to number 11. Matt has a update for us, transportation planning and Measure V, along with maybe a tour update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Yeah, so the joke is that I drove our commissioner into the mud. So we were doing a tour, which I think went pretty well because we'd done most of it. He got to see AME interchange, and Dana Hertfelder explained how AME Phase 1B would connect to Castle, and then Mark Hendrickson explained about Castle, and we did a tour of Castle, and then we went and drove
The bridges.
over the 59 bridges, so he got to see how narrow those were. And we went past the UC, and we were coming back, and we were going to go look at where Campus Parkway is going to connect to Yosemite Avenue. And I pulled off a little bit just so we could stop and look. And then cars were coming back behind me, so I pulled off a little bit more. And then that's when I got into the mud, and then we started sliding. And that was it. I tried, but back and rocking it, and that just dug me in farther. So he's going to remember this trip, hopefully fondly.
You always do something to create a memory, right?
Yeah. So the real things I wanted to report to you were that we did release a request for proposals for the Merced County West Side commuter bus study that's going to look at commuting patterns from the west side of Merced County over to South Bay and possibly East Bay as well, because there are some folks who go from Gustine up to Pleasanton and that kind of thing. But it's mostly Los Banos, Santa Nella, over the hill to San Jose area, and get a consultant on board to look at all the market analysis, which will prove useful regardless of what happens, and then also identify the feasibility of doing commuter or express bus service. So that's exciting. We've talked a little bit about the San Joaquin Valley Housing Work Group. The first meeting of that is tomorrow in Fresno, and Directors Pereira and Hogue and who else? Walta, right, are the representatives on that body, which is 24 individuals in the San Joaquin Valley, so 3 from each county. So that's first meeting's tomorrow. And then I wanted to let you know that we're looking at bringing a couple items in the near future. One is going to be the Safe Call Box program. So basically, some approaches for how we can bring information to the board so the board can provide some direction on that, because there are a lot of different possible ways that money can be spent. So we're looking at possibly getting a consultant to help with that decision-making process, just how to put that information together in the best way to facilitate a decision or guidance on that. And then also we'll be initiating a call for projects for CMAQ, so the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Program. So we're looking at releasing a call for projects in the near future, talking about some of the balance in this year's funds and also the next year. So you'll hear more about that now, but I just wanted to let you know. And of course, your staffs are closely involved in that call for projects, so you'll hear more about that as we go forward. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thanks, Matt.
What's your timeline for the bus study?
Right. We're giving them until, I believe, February 20th or something like that to turn in proposals, and then we're going to evaluate, and so possibly April is when we'll come to the board for a contract with a consultant. And then the actual study itself timeline is we're looking to the proposers to tell us. So we do have, part of the evaluation is their timeline, their proposal. So if somebody can do a great job and they can do it expeditiously, that would be great. I think that would be the ideal. But we don't necessarily want to compromise the quality of the study, by rushing it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Matt. We'll move on to item number 12, approve the work program priorities for 2020-2021. This is an action item. Mr. Fell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. These priorities serve as a foundation for our work program, and then they also help us as we go through the year. If, for example, we get a request for a letter of support and it's matches up with this, then we can do that. We are suggesting adding a few things, so we have the same list as before, but we are suggesting adding items 2, 3, and 4. So 2 is about Measure V, supporting implementation of Measure V and measure-funded projects, including in particular the East and West Side regional projects, of course. And then number 3, supporting development and funding of Pioneer Road widening project by implementing the priority policy that you adopted in November. And then 4, supporting Atwater Merced Expressway Phase 1B as it proceeds through project development towards construction. So that's our suggestions for adding to our work program priorities.
Thank you, Matt. Any other comments or questions? What is the pleasure of the board? I have a motion. And a second. You got those? Is there any comments from the public regarding these items? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the dais. I have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye. Any opposition? Motion passes unanimously. We'll move to item number 13, budget timeline, 2020-2021. This is information only. Nav Bragi.
Thank you, Chair. Usually, historically, MCIG would present its yearly budget during the budget workshop in April before the government board meeting. We had a meeting with Caltrans and FHWA, Federal Highway Administration, and they're very stringent on when we submit our budget to Caltrans this year. They wanted the budget by May 21st. So we took a look at our budget process, and we also looked at the time sensitivity of everybody's time here. So what we did was we actually broke out our budget we staggered the budget. Like in March, we'll take MCIG, and then April, we'll take TJPAs and RWAs the following month. It's not to take much of your guys' time beforehand and have the full attention of the board of what budget we'll be presenting in our budgets. Other than that, any questions?
Are there any questions? Oh, Stacy has a comment?
If I could, I'll just add, this is a trial. We want to try this different approach. As Nav mentioned, we would typically have a 3-hour or so budget workshop separate from the governing board meeting that made for a long day, and we were trying to compress a lot of information into a short amount of time considering we were covering 4 budgets. So this approach we're hoping will allow us to use this time by taking the budgets one at a time, presenting a draft budget presentation for one agency per meeting, and then the following meeting would be an adoption of that budget that we've already given the presentation on in the previous. So we're staggering it, so it'll be a budget season. This is a new approach, so we'll be looking to you at the end of budget season to let us know if this was a better model or if you would prefer to go back to a workshop.
Thank you, Stacy. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move to item number 14, accept the Measure V audited financial statements for the year ending June 30th, 2019. Nav, you're still on.
Yep. All right, thank you. So what the auditors did was they did a revenue testing report. they did revenue and expenditure testing. They went to each jurisdiction and got their general ledger and did some testing. And when they tested the revenues, what they did was they looked at what MCIG dispersed to each jurisdiction and tied it out to their general ledger to make sure it tied out, that there was no discrepancy, which there was none. They also tested expenditures, which, you know, they looked at the expenditure program and made sure that there was no other, they didn't use the money for other programs, like to cover other services besides what was explained in the Measure V handbook plan. If you go to page 98, it's expenditure by funds category as percentage of total revenue. So basically, the total revenues that has been dispersed and how much expenditures have they spent of the total revenues they received. As you can see, there's counties that are saving the money for bigger projects. So you'll see 0 to 1-2% of expenditures. On Monday, the COC took action on this and approving this item. I think there was, yeah, so it was Monday they took action and they approved the financials. Any questions?
I did not read through every page of the financial audits, but I will tell you, one of the particular on the one for Measure V is just realizing that, you know, the measure was with stated value of 15 million a year, and that's, at least in this one, we're up almost $5 million, $4.9
Right.
million more came in than what it actually, what we, you know, had hoped for in the 15 million. So that was just my one note that I took from that. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Silvera. We knew that you would probably get into the fine print of that contract or financials. So it's been presented. We're looking for an action on this item. I have a motion and a second. And you got the first and the second? At this time, is there anybody from the public who'd like to comment on this item? We'll bring it back to the dais. I have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion passes unanimously. Now we'll move on to item 15, accept the Merced County Association of Governments audited financial statements for the year ending June 30th, 2019. This is an action item. Nav, you're still up.
Thank you. Couple big changes in the financials. As the previous item, we talked about Measure V, how we received $5 million more than what was expected, about 4.9. The other big changes was the actual disbursement of the RTIP funds. So if you go to page 125, it's the revenue expenditures by fund. You'll see a decrease of $5.4 million. That's the disbursement of the Measure RTIP funds that were taken action by this board in the 17-18 fiscal year, but a lot of jurisdictions took time in getting their paperwork together, and it was dispersed in the 18-19 year. The other than that, you know, there was the other thing we did was historically MCAG never had a general fund. So when we always did our ICAP or submittal to Caltrans, they're like, there's all these other funds that are commingled with the MPO fund. So this year what we did was we have a general fund and an MPO fund. So we broke it out, and it streamlines the process of getting the ICAP approved. This year I think it took us 6 days to get our ICAP approved. Wow. Before it took months, years. So other than that, there was material weakness. It had to do with the closeout. Due to our new auditors, they came out beforehand, and by the time they reviewed our general ledger and we're going to give them a journal entry, they already discovered that we didn't do the entry. So this is my way to myself saying, okay, you know, I could have got this waived out, but I would like to, you know, for myself to keep myself on the top of my toes, you know, so keep myself accountable. So it was a closeout entry that was a timing issue on it. And that, any questions?
Well, thank you. As Director Silvera likes to say, the wheels of government move so ever slow, so we appreciate you making those corrections to make it move a little faster.
Yeah.
Are there any comments?
Just one comment, Mr. Chair. So that was out of all the audit reports that we're looking at, that was the one finding, and
Yeah, so,
and I appreciate that, that's how we get better, right? You
right.
Notice that we had a mistake, and it's in the language here, it talks about how we corrected it, and so moving
Right.
forward, we shouldn't have that. We should
No.
look for nice, clean audits next year, all
Right.
clean.
And you'll see the other audits are all clean audits.
Thank you.
Any other comments? This is an action item. What is the pleasure of the board? I have a motion on the floor and a second. Are there comments from the public regarding item 15? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the dais with the first and a second in the motions. All those in favor say aye. Any opposition? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Nav. Item number 16, proposed corrections to the MCAG Joint Powers Agreement. This is an action item. Stacy Guzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this item is a requested action to ratify the second amended and restated Joint Powers Agreement of MCAG. In October, at the October board meeting, the governing board directed staff to correct several ambiguities that were identified and to bring a corrected agreement to the governing board for review and ratification. That occurred at the discussion occurred at the November 21st board meeting. This in your packet is the same item that was proposed at that meeting, with the one exception that the document itself, the date was changed. The one that was in your November packet indicated a ratification date would be on the date of that November board meeting. The documents that are consideration today have just that date changed of being today's board meeting, since action did not happen in the November board meeting. Also notable to discuss is that at the November board meeting, there was a substantial discussion on the potential release of a previously drafted third-party council memo regarding the proposed changes in both or either closed or open session, and neither of those move forward. So the conclusion of that meeting resulted in bringing this item back for action as it was originally requested in the staff memo on November 21st.
Thank you, Stacy. Was there any discussion on this? Yes, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Chair. And first, I want to thank the board. I know this came up at the November meeting that was kind of a marathon meeting in Dos Palos, and I had to leave, and others too, so I appreciate action not being taken on that at that late hour. My question is more just around the threshold for adoption. We've all got a copy of the JPA. And the amendment requires a 2/3 vote of the board. I've talked to council, talked to the executive director. I haven't been satisfied as to explanation of why it's being put forward to a simple majority vote. But I'd like to ask again, maybe it'll be more satisfying to understand if there's a better explanation, because I just don't see it.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
As we discussed at the meeting in November, these are corrections and clarifications, not amendments. These corrections to the JPA agreement seek to put into effect what was previously adopted by the board in 2007 and 2013. In 2007, the board approved granting the amendment authority to the board of directors, and that was approved by all of the jurisdictions. And in 2013, the board acted to extend the term of the agreement. Both of those, as we've discussed previously, there are ambiguities in the agreement. There were mistakes made, and these are seeking to correct those. They're not amendments. They're seeking to put into effect what was previously adopted and approved by the board and the jurisdictions.
Okay, so that's what was shared with me previously. I mean, it's fundamentally wrong. I mean, it's just wrong. I mean, we can all read it. It takes 2/3 to call something that's being changed a correction rather than an amendment. It's just wrong. I mean, you can disagree with the substance, but let's not disagree about the process. It's very disheartening, tell you that, to have this advice come. It's actually laughable, to tell you the truth. It's embarrassing that that's the direction we might go. You know, being an attorney myself, I know lots of other attorneys. I mean, it's sort of like hard to make that argument with a straight face. So I brought one example. And Joy, if you wouldn't mind putting up on the overhead. There's no difference between a correction and an amendment, I mean, the correction is an amendment, it's an amendment, it's a change. You know, what I've shared, and you should have it up on your screen. This is just one reference point. This is actually an entry from Black's Law Dictionary. You might wonder it's just the top part really, Joy, that we need to see, so you can maybe bring it down further to the middle of the screen. And if you're able, you can even zoom in, but so you know, when you practice law, you look at court decisions, you look at statutes, and you look at other things like, this is actually a secondary source, meaning it's not from a court. You look at, it's a very trusted secondary source. Black's Law Dictionary has been sort of on every lawyer's bookshelf since, you know, for the last couple centuries. It's been quoted by the U.S. Supreme Court. I mean, this is just sort of basic stuff here, right? But, I mean, even if you look at what's on your screen, the definition of an amendment is a change made by addition, deletion, or correction. So I'm just asking that we all use our own sort of thinking caps here, because we're getting bad advice. So I hate for it to come to this. We've just been round and round on this so many times, but you know, I think the board needs to know that. There's also the issue of going back to the jurisdictions as well. You know, that needs to occur as well. But, you know, what's teed up on the agenda for us today is this discussion of, you know, taking some board action and having it be a simple majority. Frankly, this came up, unfortunately, 2 months ago in Dos Palos. Our bylaws state when the meeting times are going to be. And there was some discussion around changing that. And so it needed to be a 2/3 vote, but we heard from council again that, you know, maybe we could do it by a majority. Kind of said, well, that's not how it works. And the direction at the time was, I'm just trying to make things easier for you to get done. Well, that doesn't make anything easier. It just causes more problems. So, you know, this is the sort of the not my first, second, third, you know, choice of having to have this conversation, but it's just come to that. So I want to share that with the board.
Director Villalta.
As we've done, we've had an analysis and changing the bylaws or extending them for another 10 years is not just a simple change, and it shouldn't be done with a simple majority. And one of the things that bothers me is that we don't trust our jurisdictions to go back to them and say, okay, why don't we look this over? This is extending it for another 10 years. And that's just not correct without having some kind of review of our city councils. And so they can have some input. Maybe they have changes, maybe they don't. And maybe the bylaws need to go back too, because this just isn't right. I mean, for us to make these decisions, you're up here because you're representing your people and you're representing your cities. And here you are, you're making a decision, and you haven't been empowered by your board to make that decision other than saying that you're the appointed person. But that no one has reviewed these, get my glasses out here. Our councils have not reviewed these joint power agreements. We haven't reviewed the changes. We need to go back to our jurisdictions. And I don't know why everyone's so worried or so scared to do that. I mean, what's the harm in going back and taking up some suggestions and opening this up? I mean, we said that these things had expired because they weren't done right. And basically we have an attorney's opinion, but all we have is the cover letter and then the rest of the body. And my attorney wanted to know how he arrived at that decision. And yet this board voted that down with public funds that were allocated to have this opinion, and now it can't be shared, or you don't want it shared. I mean, you know, we're up for election again, and we have to answer to the people, we have to answer to our cohorts, we have to answer to the city council members that we have, and we go back and tell them, it says, we're not going to share that information with you? It just doesn't make sense. Why can't we have just be open about this?
Director Lohr.
Thank you. For public information, if I am incorrect, please correct me. I believe, Director Villalta, you were on the board at the time that this was amended or extended. If I'm wrong, please correct me. And then
I can't correct something that was done wrong.
no, I'm. Okay, so my point is, you were sitting as a board member when this was extended, and we can go back and look at the minutes to confirm that. We also, this conversation has been ongoing for months, and if you as the designated representative, or us as designated representatives, needed our jurisdiction's approval or opinion, we had a good 3 months to do that.
Any other comments? Hold on, we'll go with Joe. The mute button needs to be off, or the mute light off.
There it is. Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is going on a few months now discussing this. And everybody has their points, but if our attorney is comfortable with it, I am comfortable with it. I think it's been discussed ad nauseum. It's, to me, it's not that big a deal. It's correcting. Every jurisdiction has had things that they've gone back and had to redo a little bit or tweak, or sometimes they get caught earlier, sometimes they get caught later, but I'm just ready to put this to bed and move on. We already have meetings about where it would take a 2/3 majority if we decide to change the makeup of the council. Those talks are ongoing. But for now, I think it's time to put this to bed, and with that, I'd make a motion to approve.
I have a first and a second. Are there other discussion?
Roll call vote, please.
Okay, I'd like to open it up for anybody from the public that'd like to make a comment on this. Seeing none, we'll bring it back. We'll do a roll call vote.
Director Aguilar? Director Espinoza? Director McGlynn? Director Lohr? Director Murphy?
No.
Director Oliveira?
Aye.
Director Pereira? Director Silvera? Director Villalta? Chair McDaniel?
There's not a tie. Is it? Yes. Motion passes. 6-2, or 6-3. Okay, we'll move on to item number 17, 2020 appointments to regional boards. Stacy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an annual item that we started several years ago. As you know, that this body appoints and collaborates with a number of regional boards across the valley and appoints representatives to serve in a various number of roles. So these appointments are made for an unlimited term that continues at the discretion of this governing body, or until the appointee resigns or is no longer a member of the governing board. Several years ago, we began the practice of, on an annual basis, reviewing these appointments to do a few things. One, to confirm the incumbent's interest to continue to serve, and to address any vacancies that may exist. So on page 213 and 214 of your agenda packet is a list of what those appointments are. I will go through them briefly, and I'm happy to answer any questions about the particular organizations if any of them seem unfamiliar. We have the California Association of Councils of Government, or what we often refer to as CalCog, where we have a representative. Currently, that representative is Director Pereira, and we have an alternate, and that is Director Hogue. And this is typically, the role is typically 2 meetings a year, one in Sacramento and one at an annual conference. That annual conference is typically in March. This year it's in Riverside, April 5th through the 7th. The second board is the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority. We, again, have 1 member and 1 alternate. Those positions are being filled as Director Espinoza serves as the board member, and Chair McDaniel serves as the alternate. These board meetings are typically held every other month at various locations in the central San Joaquin Valley. The third is the San Joaquin Valley Regional Policy Council. This, we have 2 board members and 1 alternate, with 1 board member being a city representative and 1 being a county representative, and the alternate unspecified between the 2. The current representatives are, for the city spot is Director Villalta. The county spot is Chair McDaniel, and the alternate is Director Murphy. These meetings are, year to year, this varies, but it's typically 2 to 4 meetings a year. The meetings, locations vary because it's an 8-county board, so they can be at any part, typically central part of the valley. And they do, there is an expectation that both policy council members participate in the meetings, which are typically also available by phone. The core activity of this particular group is the Valley Voice program. That is essentially like our One Voice program, but it's 8-county wide, and it also includes, in addition to an annual trip to Washington, a day trip or sometimes an overnight and a day to Sacramento. This particular body has an emphasis on representatives having a kind of a solid understanding or an interest to learn and get engaged in regional issues and a willingness to work collaboratively across the 8-county region. And then lastly, I'll mention CalVans, where we have 1 board member and 1 alternate. Those are currently filled by Director Villalta as the board member and Director Silvera as the alternate. And those meetings are the second Thursday of every month. They're in Hanford, but you can always take those board meetings via conference call at the MCAG office. So in the past, the way we've approached this, because it can be 1 action if it works out that way, is if you look at the bottom of the staff report on 215, it gives you that list of all the positions that we're looking to address. So typically it has been, we first ask the incumbents that I just reviewed to indicate their interest in continuing to serve, as well as asking if there's any additional interest from other board members in any of these roles. And we typically take them 1 at a time and then make those nominations and do appointments. That's how it's worked in the past. But we can also take them individually if that makes more sense. So I would look to the chair to indicate how he'd like me to move forward.
Well, I look at the board. I think maybe the first thing, is there anybody who isn't wanting to serve in a current position that they've been on?
Don't let that deter you to volunteer to serve in that role.
You could have said that a little more straight-faced, please. Yes, Director Villalta?
I was absent from a meeting, and you appointed me to CalVans, and I'll tell you that I enjoy it. So
Right, yeah.
So it's
Well, it fits the west side well.
I've learned a lot, and it's given me a lot of information to help with the other boards that I'm on. So you know, I like it.
Good.
If I could, I look to Director McGlynn. I don't know if the mayor had communicated to you, but I got the sense in her email to me that she was not interested in continuing as the CalCog alternate. Does that sound like news to you? Well, then I'll take we'll go with that.
Yes, Mr. Pereira.
So as the primary member for CalCog, and I will serve again. However, if there's somebody else that has an interest in it, I'm willing to step aside and either let April be the primary and somebody be an alternate to learn, or, but if nobody else wants it, I will continue.
Yeah, being CalCog before, you do learn a lot. It's very, very informative with a whole, it's like drinking water from a fire hose, right? So maybe I'll ask, is there any interest in any other positions? Wow, this is the quietest this board has ever been. So, it looks like we can move forward as presented.
We just need a new Calvan.
I need a Calvan's alternate. Well, I think if nobody steps up, Scotty will be automatically assigned. And it fits well with the west side.
I nominate Director Creighton for it to be the alternate on Cal Vance.
Well, should we call for a vote on that one, or is that your motion for all of them with that to be inclusive?
You know what, I will make that as my motion, that we'll just reappoint everybody to where they're at with the exception of 4B, and we'll nominate Paul Creighton, Director Paul Creighton.
I have a motion on the floor.
Second.
I have a second from Villalta. Any comments from the public? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the dais. All those in favor say aye. Any opposition? Did anybody hear Paul? No. Motion passes unanimously. Transit Joint Powers Authority for Merced County. Item number 18, Transit Joint Powers Authority for Merced County Monthly Update. Christine Chavez. Good afternoon.
Chair and directors. Christine Chavez, Transit Manager. I wanted to give you an update on just a couple of items, starting with the ridership for the month of December. So for fiscal year 1920, in December, we had 56,872 passengers on fixed route. Measure V, we had 16,140 passengers that utilized the free fare system. And fixed route in December, our total average for passengers per hour was 6.18. And for paratransit and general dial-a-ride, our passengers per hour was 1.54. So I'm not sure, I'm sorry I haven't seen this presentation before, but if you guys want to see the information in any other manner, please let me know. I know I have service miles and hours, if you guys are interested in seeing those as well. Or if you guys are interested in seeing maybe year over year, month over month, I can present that information in whatever format you would like.
So is our ridership continuing to increase?
It takes a slight dip in December, because it was at 66,000 in November and then down to 56. But I can give you a general percentage growth each month.
That would be good help.
Okay.
Yes, Director Ferrer.
Yeah, and if, I don't know about today, well, I guess you could email it to us. I would like to have it emailed.
Okay.
But in the future, if the numbers, they're not in the packet, right? I'd look for them.
No, I can put them in the packet. I believe we have time from when we receive it from our contractor to put into the contract, or into the agenda board packet before it goes to print.
Yeah, I just have real concerns about how we spend our money there in the ridership, and you know, and the usage has kind of trended up, but we've also really increased the free rides, and so you know, absent that, I think either we need to do something different, I think, but I'd like to have the numbers to be able to talk about that.
Okay, and one thing I will add is I met with the operators this month. I tend to go to safety meetings and just kind of make them aware of issues going on, or just, you know, thank them for being safe. And I'm working on updating the fare tracking system, GFI fare boxes, so we can more accurately track our ridership. So I hope in the near future I can get you exact details on how many veterans, seniors, and ADA passengers we're actually transporting. So I'm getting them used to making sure they're properly checking ID when they board. So I hope to have that to you within the next couple months. So on a similar note, I'm going to go through a few items that I've been working on this past month. So on Monday, we had the Merced College Bus for You program start. So that's the essentially free rides all semester with the paid $9.95 semester tuition So collectively, this is our pilot program. Collectively, we're encouraging students to ride the bus and create that new generation of bus riders. I'm going to be updating you guys on that monthly, and I'll be sure to include that in the packet on how our ridership is looking. But we did add a tally sheet to that. A tally key to that. And we are planning on having an outreach booth within the next couple weeks at the college to inform the students of how and when and where they can catch the bus. And get them more comfortable with riding the bus so that we can see a successful pilot program. And just by way of background, I came from the City of Visalia and Tulare County Association of Governments, and I actually took the lead on the implementation of the College of Sequoia's Student Transit Pass program in 2012, and it's been extremely successful, and so I have a lot of the, knowledge and technical ability to kind of manage a program like that, including set aside for capital for potential expansion, because that program, similar to this one, was kind of, filling the empty seats on the bus, and then they were so full we had to start going to expansion. So I hope that we have that sort of success here, if that is our ultimate goal. So I'm excited about that program. I'm working on a draft policy for vehicle disposal and LTF reserve and prioritization, so I hope to have that to you within the next 2 months. If you have any suggestions for that, feel free to reach out to me. And on a similar note, if you guys want to meet with me and talk about any of the concerns that you have within your communities for transit needs or just some frustrations, I'd be glad to hear them. We're gearing up for the operations and maintenance contractor turnover. We're still going through the draft of that, Stacy kind of mentioned. I'm working on firming up a lot of policies, internal policies, and making sure that we get off on the right foot. So if there's something specific that you want to see with the new contractor, that's just a performance issue, then you can let me know and I can make sure that that's addressed right off the bat. So we're anticipating a spring turnover date. We don't have an exact date yet, but once we have that, we'll make that available to everyone. I know that the ventilation at the operations and maintenance facility has been an issue that has been addressed. There was a kind of kink in the line that was not allowing it to properly ventilate. So we called a contractor to have a second ventilation put in because there was a misunderstanding of the functionality of it. So as far as I'm aware, it's been addressed as of today. So we should be good on that. And then the electric vehicles, we're working on getting on procurement lists so that we can have options for purchasing the vehicles that we were awarded under the 5339 bus and bus facilities. So we will get started on that project as well as the infrastructure plans. And this week, or the past couple weeks, staff has been working diligently on a TERSIP grant application, which you guys will be seeing a submittal for that next month for a resolution for support. It's the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program that would go towards meeting some of our unmet needs for operation or for expansion. So that would provide us with electric capital to do that additional need that we've identified. So with that, I'll take any questions or any additional information needed.
Okay, Stacy, you had two things you wanted to add?
I just wanted to point out that I appreciate Christine mentioning the TERSIP application because that was one of the pots of funding that the commissioner identified earlier today about transit leveraging opportunities, so we're taking advantage of those. And the second, to Director Pereira's comments about getting to that point where we feel like we need to do things differently, we have moved up our plans to begin the short-range transit plan, which is a 5-year or so, and Christine probably has, and Matt, it's actually on the COG side of our house, but it will look at a 5-year outlook of our transit system, our revenues, our needs, and it just kind of do that holistic approach and give us ideas of, how we might be able to do things differently. It's a very oversimplified version, but that's something that we'll kick off this spring.
Director Espinoza.
Yeah, I do need to talk to you on a stop with Father Harvey in Livingston. He's been trying to change that stop over there. So I'll give you specifics after the meeting if you want to
Sure.
ask me at the end, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Any other comments? Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to item number 19, accept the Transit Joint Powers Authority for Merced County audited financial statements for the year ending June 30th, 2019. Nav, you're up again.
Thank you. Quick question. I mean, this is for everyone. I mean, I'm just doing what has been done historically. If you guys want me to say something different or do something different, what you guys want to see, please let me know. Because, you know, I don't know what you guys want to see. So I would like to really, demonstrate whatever you guys want to see. I'll open book, transparency. So, going forward, you guys let Stacy know or myself what you guys want to see on our financials, and I will, address any needs that you guys need. So, a couple of highlights for the transit.
So you're open for change?
Yeah, of course,
If
all
suggested.
times.
Good, I just want to clarify that.
Yes. Couple highlights for the transit budget. Couple key highlights is the increase in assets. It went up by $8.8 million. That has to do with the facility, the capitalization of the Stu facility. There's also other changes in the financials, like our funding source has gone down, but that's also has to do with the funding that we used for the facility. We used it in the previous year to pay for it, and so in the 18-19 year, we didn't need those fundings. So there's a decrease in our funding, but that's like PTM-SCA, and Cal OAS money, which was used in the 17-18 year, not the 18-19 year. One thing I'd like to point out, which was highlighted in our financials, as Christine mentioned, on our paratransit Dallas service, our target is 2 riders per hour, but we're at 1.56. If you go to page 235, it shows that the Dallas service is at 5.9%, a fare box ratio. TDA requires us to have it at 10%. So, just want to highlight that we are addressing this issue with the short range transit plan, but I do want to point out that this is a concern on our side as well. But everything else, clean audit, everything else good. Any questions?
Thank you, Nav. Any questions? Okay. What was the pleasure of the board on this one? Actually, anybody from the public like to make comments on this item at this time? Please form a line to the left. We'll bring it back here to the dais. I have a motion and a second by Espinoza. All those in favor say aye. Any opposition? Motion passes unanimously. Now we'll move on to the Merced County Regional Waste Management Authority. This is item number 20, Merced County Regional Waste Management Authority monthly update. Eric Zetz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Thank you, Joy. Such a great help. Happy New Year. Good to see all of you. So we are we on? There we are. Okay. So I'm going to provide this is a just informational item. It's going to be just giving you guys a little bit of an update on the Regional Waste Authority's, some of the things we've been doing. We're going to talk tonight about the December tonnage reports. We'll give you an update. This board at the last meeting, if you recall, we had some discussion on Saturday service. We'll give you an update on that. We'll talk about the Senate Bill 1383. We've Director Murphy, I passed by you as I was in trying to make a meeting on some of these agencies. I apologize for not sitting there and spending more time with you, but we'll give you an update on those meetings. And then also we will talk to you about landfill gas to energy, so I'll give you a little bit of an update on that. So for our December tonnage reports, overall we are up by about 1,000 tons. You will notice that Highway 59 is up about a little over 2,000 tons, and then Billy Wright landfill has gone down about 2,000. That is indicative of the waste stream that we lost that I reported back to you in November. So we're still trying to find a replacement for that. Overall, though, we are up, which is good. Saturday service. So this board at our last meeting, you all approved that the operations run full Saturdays, and so we have been in full Saturdays since that time. January 11th is, and it just by way of our schedules, but January 11th is the day at which we made it effective, otherwise it would have been a half day, and so we've done that. So just so you know, both sites, Billy Wright and Highway 59, are open at 7 a.m. to 3:30. Just so you know, this past Saturday, we had one of the highest volumes of traffic. Now, that's indicative of cash sales type operations, but it was following a holiday. Anytime we have a holiday, we've got a high volume of the public that comes in. So anyhow, things are going well with that. And I should back up, the executive director sent you all an email last night that let you know that we are looking to have our signage in place and our staffing by February 1st. And so we hope to have really that in place before we begin to really advertise this greatly. Currently, the signs do say it's a halftime on certain Saturdays, and we don't want to confuse the public. 1383. So we have been having meetings with the jurisdictions. Those meetings, the agency discussion item there on the left that you see before you, that's the packet that we're talking about with each of the jurisdictions. And so we're going through the regulatory timeline, talking about the milestones in the law, what timelines those are, the action planning process for each individual agency, the overview of the planning process of how this works, and then what specific program compliance and policy compliance options there are for each jurisdictions. And then we're focused on next steps. You'll see that on the right of your column, agency meetings, we've met with each of the jurisdictions. We will close our these initial meetings with the city of Merced and the city of Los Banos on the 29th. So here is that timeline. I thought it was important to just show this to you all. This is exactly what the agencies are being told. On the left there, you see 2018-19, CalRecycle initiated formal rulemaking in 2018. This is a spreadsheet from CalRecycle, and I'm here to tell you that they did not adopt the regulations in 2019. The last revision I saw was just under 190 pages, and I believe they need to get it approved here in this next month or two. So that's what we're playing with. But the law or the dates will not change that you see. January 1 of 2020, the state has to achieve 50% reduction in organics disposal. By January 1, 22, that is the date that each of our jurisdictions are really held to compliance with this law, and that's what we're working towards. And at that point, we've got enforcement actions that have to take place. There's an ordinance requirement. And so we're sharing with the jurisdictions in these meetings these timelines. Landfill gas to energy. So the authority put out a request for a proposal. That request for proposal went out December 18th. It is really a request for qualifications. We're looking for a qualified individual to be our construction manager at risk. But it does have some cost merits in the proposal, and so therefore it has been elevated to a request for proposal. So with that, that was issued on December 18th. We had a mandatory site visit that was required for every individual proposer, that they had to have representation on the site on January 10th. That meeting occurred this past Friday. And so on that Friday, the email as well had some pictures, and I'll show you a couple of those here if you didn't see that. But on this January 10th visit, we did a tour at the Highway 59 landfill. We saw the flare where the connection would tap into, and then we followed that pipeline path down Bellevue over to the UC campus. And so with that, we got to end up at the UC Merced campus, at which we had representatives there to meet with the proposers. And so there was a Q&A that occurred there at that time. And so what you have before you is we're looking at the RFP to be completed. The deadline for that is to be January 29th. So we're moving pretty quickly with this. And then we'll do committee evaluations of the potential proposers that come in to make sure they're qualified as we go forward, February 3rd. And then we will look to February and March for intent to negotiate an award.
Eric?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
I just want to add, just to remind the board of this process. This was, we are bringing on a CM at risk firm to assist us to shore up our pro forma, drill down into the numbers a little bit more. This is not additional, there's no additional funding request. This is within the budget that we currently have for the project, but it's to make sure we've dotted all of our I's and crossed all of our T's on the pro forma and other issues and concerns that we've talked about in previous meetings, to lead us up to, again, bringing back to this board a future action of whether or not to pursue this project. So, see, I just didn't want anyone to be alarmed seeing construction in this contract because it's really a two-part. It's getting us to a decision point so that we can bring back the final pro forma, the best we can do with the budget that we have. And then at that point, the board will be asked if you want to continue, and if we continue, then there will be this contract will be able to show us what that cost will be, and there'll be some certainties there that we're not able to provide at the time. So just didn't want to alarm anyone that we were moving forward in construction in any way.
Yes, Mr. Walton.
I'm happy and relieved to hear that, because the first initial numbers that we received were pretty depressing, and I didn't want us to get into a negative number situation. And so before we give and again, just to understand and to recap, before we give our final approval of this, we're going to have some hard numbers to see if this is going to pan out.
Right. So if I've said construction in this, I apologize. This is not construction. So thank you for that clarification, Stacy. You all approved looking into this project, which is the phase 1 component of this. We're spending no more than $10,000 for this part of the work, which is already approved by this board. The construction manager at risk in this process, as it goes to conclusion in February, March, will give us that individual that's then going to assess what it's going to take to design and fully construct that project on paper. And so when they do those efforts, it will be in line with what we've already budgeted for that effort. So when we get that back, that's phase 1. We'll come back to you all and we'll say, here's what they're suggesting. This is the process, this is the design work, and this is the cost anticipated based upon capital, labor, right away, what have you. And when that comes to you, that will then a decision that you all will make to progress us to phase 2. So this is really just work based on what you've already approved.
But this will tell us whether there's a payback or not, a realistic
Absolutely.
payback.
Absolutely.
That's all I'm asking.
It will.
All right.
Yep.
Yes, Mr. Pereira.
How many firms showed up to the on-site visit?
Right, so here's the firms that showed up for the on-site visit. I didn't...
One per vehicle, or?
Yeah, so I want to say that we had, well, I don't know if I
want to say
included-
6.
Okay. So,
I counted 6 vehicles that morning, but I didn't see the sign-in sheet. We were happy. Let's just say, let's go with 5. I feel a lot more comfortable. But it was a good turnout.
give or take a handful, yeah.
And then would the construction management at risk firm, if there were, are they only going to evaluate the Highway 59 landfill to UC Merced project, or will they? Okay, so they won't look at other possibilities?
Yeah, this is really a unique situation, but given the scope and the potential cost, and benefit of this for all parties involved, you're really looking at something at which, for phase 1, the proposers are going to propose what they feel their qualifications are for getting out there and doing design work for you. And then even that design work is only up to $10,000 for what we've already approved for phase 1. So it's work to get into with the hope that they can be involved in with the phase 2. Many of these firms are going to get in early, and they're going to try to get in on the phase 1 part, so that if in fact this board does approve phase 2, that they might have a shot for coming into that. So this is only going to be for a pipeline that goes from Highway 59 landfill flare to the UC Merced campus.
Okay, so if there was a project that could go from the 59 landfill next door and be kind of a different process, that won't be evaluated at all in this.
Right, so UC Merced is really, they are a large proponent for this project, and so with that, I have asked the question if we had a future hospital, because in this business there are hospitals that are tapped into this type of a pipeline. And I've asked if a hospital were to pop up during the route of that pipeline, would they entertain us being able to tap into that, have a tie-in? And they were pretty adamant for their climate action plan. They need all of our fuel, they want all of our fuel, and they don't want our fuel going anywhere else. So some of those are being worked out in our language for our purchase power agreement, which when we really come into phase 2 and those types of things, we'll get into the weeds of that kind of stuff. But at this point, it is discussed to be just for UC Merced.
And Director Pereira, just a bit of context that I can provide to Eric too, is that when this project was initially discussed, and this it was before my time, but I even know in different phases, and maybe Marty had more information, there was a discussion about alternatives for this fuel. I know there was some research into what it would look like if we used it to fuel a fleet, and a number of different alternatives. This was several years ago that led to this UC partnership really being the most the most feasible, or that's where that pathway led. I would see that and I'm just kind of looking ahead, I feel like we're at that 11th hour on this particular project, that if we decide to go or no go, I could see that in the event, if this project, we get to that point in the next 2 months or 3 months, and this board decides not to pursue the UC project, those other alternatives then could be something that we could bring on and try to explore again. But that initial assessment of what other opportunities there are, I know that happened with Brooks when he came on in his first year or two. So there was some analysis at that time, if that kind of gets to your question of, because I think what we're looking at now, particularly because we have a limited budget to get us to that finish line for this phase, is that it'll be targeted solely for the merits of this particular project.
Okay, so this is the UC Merced campus. This is where turbines will go, to the right of where everybody's standing there. Our consultant is the one on your right. That is Paul Stout, and he is directing the group there. So pretty exciting. This process, I'm going to go back to the timeline. I'm just here to bring it as information. The executive directors asked that we present a workshop to you, and so we'll be working forward to get that to you as we get closer with this. And again, we're excited. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
And I had procurement team confirm that we had 6 firms.
Okay, Director Espinoza.
I know that question regarding other possibilities. So is this, the contract with UC Merced would be an exclusive contract? We have to provide 100% of the gas to them? Or can we include it maybe at 10%, 20%? Have the option of retaining 10, 20%, just in case there's somebody else might want close by, with all the growth in the future 10, 20 years, they can potentially, we can sell 10, 20% at a higher or double the price.
Sure.
But just a suggestion.
Absolutely, and we will follow up on that suggestion when we get into the weeds, the purchase power agreement to this. I mean, really, that's kind of ahead of the game. I mean, we really got to see if this board chooses to take action after phase 1.
Yes.
So when you said earlier that these firms, they typically would come in and get in early to be on phase 1 with the hope that they're going to get to phase 2, and they know that this board is still undecided on whether we're going to go to phase 2, right?
Right.
They all know that.
Yeah, and that is the at-risk portion here. This is, it benefits them. We had individuals fly in for this meeting on a Friday. Everything happened really quick once we issued the RFP, and I should back up, and I should thank Alicia and her staff for doing that RFP, but so you had individuals that were coming in quickly just because they knew the value of the project, and there really is only maybe a handful, maybe 3. I was expecting 3. If we had 6, it's great. So that means we are really going to catch a net of very qualified individuals. So we're extremely hopeful. This is a no-loss proposition. Phase 1 is going to help you guys out. You'll be able to look at what we provide to you based upon what those CM at risk provide to us. And then when we provide that to you, it's your call whether or not we proceed forward.
And I think that what ultimately makes it, for me, something worth doing is, what is the return on the investment? What kind of capital are we going to put out there? And over a period of time, the return on that investment. And I guess if the college is in love with this as much as you said they are, that they want and need, and then they have to be willing to pay for it. Because if they're not willing to pay for it, then it doesn't look good on our part, and then the project goes away and we just keep burning it off. Right?
Absolutely.
That's what it boils down to. So in your conversations with them, remind them that the things that they love come with a price tag. So.
Absolutely, and Director Silvera, if I could just add, the conversations that the authorities had with UC Merced, they have, on their own right, purchased or consulted with our consultant to look at the design and options on their end, just to see if we do this, if we do that. And so they're working on their side already right now, putting out money. What I would say is that when we come back to your board with the workshop, we will have UC Merced here. We will have all of the financial data. The challenge with this is that it's not a full RFP because it doesn't have bidding pricing information fully in it. And so we will need to, once the CM at risk is selected, work with that individual so that we can get true performa numbers, button that performa up, come back then to this board and say, this is what we feel strongly can happen. And then based upon that, we have the consultants to say financially what the return on investment is.
And when you have these folks that come in and they tell you these pro forma numbers, does it come with any kind of guarantee? Like if I can just walk in there and say, hey, you're going to do this, but if there's no guarantee, I mean, is it their reputation on the line? I mean, what kind of assurances do we have that those numbers are actually those numbers?
So we have 3 consultants, and again, we're getting into the weeds, but you're looking at 3 consultants, and the 3 consultants, one's an engineering firm, another is an engineering quasi, they do some budgeting work, but then there's strictly a bond financial consultant that we have. And so basically it's parts that when one person comes up with the capital, the line items, the budget, the labor, they feel sound with that. That's one part in that one consultant. Then that is given to the other consultant. The other consultant will look at the individual return on investment, the loss gain ratio, and when you can expect to see revenues and returns on investment based upon your costs. And so they're playing independently on each other. When we do the workshop, we'll have them both here so that they can both, speak soundly to what they feel confident in presenting to you.
In the design of by going with the CM at risk, and I'm going to look at Marty and Eric, and I hope they don't stand up and stop me here, but as I understand it, because this CM at risk model is new to me, but one of the benefits of going is that once we get to the point of construction, there is a point where we're in agreement. They say this is what we can construct this project for this amount, and when we go into contract for that second part of actual construction, they're guaranteeing delivery of the project for that amount. So that's a way to mitigate the potential for the budget of this project in the construction phase to go sideways. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Very close. They're going to
Good.
have indicative pricing in
Director Volta.
So just like if something doesn't perform, say in a bond, and it comes back to a board and they had to raise the bond payment to make sure that they met the needs. So say the performa wasn't what it should be, and the amount of fuel that they're going to use. Is that a varying amount so we can make sure that we do get our money?
Right, so the performa is going to be a varying amount. It's going to be something that comes in here and gives you an estimate on what they expect based upon what the bidder has proposed. And so that performa, generally these projects, they will go anywhere from 3 to 7 years with which you're paying towards something before you return on investment. And so really everything is tied to the initial capital costs of what this turns out to be. And so we've got to get the CM at risk to give us what they feel their best effort design is. And they're held, as Stacy has said, they're held to a high standard of once they put that in pen and paper, then they've got to come X amount of months when this board approves phase 2 and actually hold to those costs. And so we should have a pretty accurate idea of what that looks like. And the hope is that with all of the individuals, that we have a fair balance where you have one consultant doing a set of numbers that then the other consultant is basing their information based on those numbers. And this has been an ongoing process. The individuals that have been involved in this process have done great work, and I think we're really at the fine-tuning part. We just need the CM at risk to give us their information.
So then the price of that fuel then could be up or down based on the amount that they're going to purchase and what the payback's going to be.
That is correct, but UC Merced has got they've got a growth plan that is greater than what it sits at today, and so they've got a capacity, they're not like a hospital. The hospital in Santa Margarita is already tapped out. It can only use what it's got, and so they're having to burn off the excess fuel, which doesn't then go in line with the climate action plan of the state. It doesn't meet the goals for Merced and regional waste. So in this case, we've got really initial inputs of what they're expecting to take initially that will only increase to when their full build-out is there.
Right, but I could promise you I'm going to buy 100 gallons a month and then cut back and only buy 50.
So I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that that expansion may be in the near future, may not be in the near future. And I want to know the avenue of how this is going to pay back and what it's going to pay back and when it's going to pay back. And so we don't get stuck holding the bag for a while.
So the price per, I think it's per kilowatt hour, is set in, was established in the memorandum of understanding and has been transferred into the draft power purchase agreement. So what they will pay for how much gas, and that's established will be established as part of the power purchase agreement going into it, as is the language that they are committing to purchase all of our gas. So that language is established and will be solidified in the power purchase agreement, as well as the termination language, the termination fee language that we are working on, that I feel like we've taken a very strong position that we need to be made whole in the event of any kind of a termination. So we do have certainty to say that if some unforeseen circumstance changes at the UC and they don't want the gas, they may not take it, but they're still paying us for
You
it.
still pay for it.
Yes. So those are the main tenets that I'm constantly looking for as we go through these iterations of the draft power purchase agreement.
Okay, I feel better. Thank you.
All right, so we just don't want you to be
And I do as well.
surprised. There were,
Good question.
sorry, we don't want you to be surprised. There are individuals at our site for this effort, so just wanted to make you aware.
Very good. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Move on to item number 21, 2020 Merced County Regional Waste Management Authority calendar. This is an information item. Kyle Loretto, good to see you.
Good evening. Just real quick, this is, the calendar should be in your packet. So yes, this should be in your packet, the calendar is, and as Eric said, we have updated it to include the Saturday hours. And starting this weekend will be our first household hazardous waste event out at Highway 59. And the following Saturday, our first community cleanup. Just wanted to highlight a few things that every month, March, very busy up through all the community events and on household hazardous waste event out in Los Banos. For the west side, will be on the first Saturday in March. In April, we, again, every Saturday we have events going on. And then through the summer, we will not be having any events. Through the community events, however, again, the Saturdays we are open. And then again, we start picking up again in the fall, September, October, and November cleanups. If there's any questions about the calendar or our hours or the cleanups, please let me know.
Any questions?
Just one suggestion.
Sure.
For the household waste.
Yes.
Is maybe, do customers going to use this calendar?
Yes, this is available on our.
So maybe either write that out or put a ledger down at the bottom.
Understand.
Okay, anything else? Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item number 22, accept the Merced County Regional Waste Management Authority audited financial statements for the year ending June 30th, 2019. This is an action item. Nav, you're up again.
Thank you. Probably tired about seeing me now, huh? Couple highlights. The total liabilities have decreased by $1 million. That's due to paying the bond payments on a yearly basis. Our total assets increased by $6.7 million. That's due to capitalization of the ability right to be sell and purchase of equipment. Couple of other highlights is the total operating revenues is $17 million, and the operating expense was $10 million. After paying the bond payment and moving money to the post-closure, we'll have around $5 million to put towards capital projects for next year and the years forward. Any questions?
Are there any questions?
5 million. 5 million.
5 million. Yeah. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll open it up to the,
So on page 269, down near the bottom under net investments and capital assets, restricted. Is that really a $27 million change?
On 269,
Yeah,
the
the bottom,
22 million.
27,397,000. In the change column?
Yeah. Yeah, because we also, well, it's not really, let me see. No, that's an error on the auditors.
Hey, tell them for $5
Oh, that's why
grand.
it says draft on it. Once you guys approve it, I'll make sure. Yeah.
wow.
Thank you, Lloyd. Mr. Pereira.
Okay, we'll open up for any comments from the public regarding this item. We'll bring it back to the dais. Any other comments or questions? Further discussion? Okay, what's the pleasure? This is an action item. Very good. So I have a motion on the floor. And I have a second. All those in favor say aye. Any opposition? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Nav. Now we'll move into item number 23, act on property damage claim, Fidel Mercado. Christina,
Good afternoon.
good afternoon.
So it's pretty straightforward. The customer was dumping trash on the pad, and one of our service trucks backed into the hood of the truck. It was very light tap, but the weight of the truck dented that hood. And it was investigated right away, corrective actions taken place, and it was on the authority to correct that issue. So we are asking that the action be taken to approve the claim, that the claimant might be compensated for the damage to their vehicle.
Thank you. Well, I have a first and a second. Let's ask if there's any public comment regarding this item. We'll bring it back to the dais. Is there further discussion up here? Okay, I have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposition? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Christina. Now we'll move into other reports. Item number 24 is a closed session item, public employee performance evaluation. At this time, we will go ahead and go into closed session. Let's, by request, let's do a 5-minute break on our way into closed session. Yeah. Yeah, they said we could, as long as we're not there till 6:30. Mike, did you provide food? Go ahead and move on to item number 25, Executive Director's Report. Stacy Desmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did ask staff to hang back for a second because I wanted to just make a couple of staffing announcements. Alicia Ochoa-Jones has been promoted to our purchasing and contracts manager as a direct report to me. She's been in our leading our procurement department for longer than I have been with the agency and has been doing an excellent job, and we're excited to be working together to implement new ideas about how we can be more efficient in both our planning for procurements and the execution and implementation of our contract management. So Alicia is here. You'll see her more often, and you will be seeing her at the podium as we move forward with our procurement process. And then the second is Matt Fell has been sitting, as I've come into my position here and figured out how all of this is going to work, has been filling a role as essentially a COG deputy director. So if we were in a traditional COG agency, he would be my right hand, he'd be my number two, but because we have a unique structure, his position has been promoted to deputy director for planning. So that's essentially the deputy for our planning function on the MPO side, and both of those were effective, I believe, 2 weeks ago. So I just want to say congratulations and thank you to Matt and Alicia.
Thank you, Stacy. Now we're to director's reports.
State of the City's on Friday, February 7th, the Merced. Doors open at 10:30 and the program's from 11 to noon. It's free. Everyone's invited to attend. And it's streamed online too if you can't make it in person.
Oh, good.
No report.
Was there a winner?
So auditions are through tomorrow. It's not too late. It doesn't need to be, it just needs to be entertaining. So.
Michael McGowan. Hey. Director Lohr. Director Silvera. Director. Usually I say nothing to report, but I am here to report proudly that yesterday at RCRC, Rural County Representatives of California, I was sworn in as chairman of the 37 rural counties in California. We do poke fun and say it's like being the governor of the state of Jefferson. But looking forward to representing rural counties throughout California and Washington, D.C. for this next year. At this time, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you. Yes, we do. And Mike's gonna give me some dates, and Mike and I